invite a member of the Sundance family to present a film. And in this case, we have a family member here at Sundance who just reminded me that this is his ninth feature, or now ninth film playing at this festival. According to my notes, Ira, you can correct me, but you first joined us on the mountain back in '94 with your experimental short, Lady, and 3 years later premiered the debut feature, Lady. Back in 2023, Ira was here with Passengers, a bunch of other films in between. But this is really exciting for us to continue that journey with Ira at this festival with Peter Hujar's Day. The film takes us to New York. It's 1974, and Manhattan, especially the part of Manhattan we're honing in on, is bustling with artists, from the titular Peter Hujar to Allen Ginsberg to, of course, Linda Rosencrantz. And Ira offers us the exclusive chance to spend a day with two great American creatives of the 20th century. You are in for a treat. It's always an honor to stand in front of you to welcome an artist. It's especially exciting this morning to be able to introduce you once again to Ira Sachs. Please join me in welcoming you.
It's so nice to be here, and to be with this group of people. I feel very welcomed and not that nervous, which is good. I first came to Sundance when I was 13. That was the first time I went to the festival, so I've been coming here for 46 years. I'm very grateful for many things, but I will say that in '94, when my film played Lady, it was a short film. It played in a double feature with Andy Warhol's Poor Little Rich Girl at midnight at the Egyptian. In '91, I was here to see the premiere of Poison by Todd Haynes, and I actually wrote the review for the Village Voice. In '89, I was here with Norman Renee's film, Longtime Companion, one of the first films about artists and individuals with AIDS in New York City, and that was a very monumental moment. My father actually walked out of the film. So. And then there was a year when they had a Fassbinder retrospective, and every actress from the Fassbinder films was at the Yarrow doing a panel, and you just were like, this place is really for me where I've learned about cinema, where cinema seems possible. And I have to say that the through line of all those artists is that there's a lot of queer people in those films. There's Fassbinder, there's Andy Warhol, there's me, there's Norman Renee, there's Peter Hujar. And I have to say that Sundance is unique, really unique in the world, in making that journey and sustaining those films, and in, for me, really saying what I want to do. The most personal stuff to me is possible and is desired. And I'm so grateful to Eugene, to Ken, to John, to Sundance, to Michelle Satter, who is just a goddess, let's just say. That we're here today, and I think Peter Hujar would also be very happy to be here today. So thank you, enjoy the film. I'll be here with a bunch of wonderful people who made the film with me afterwards, so enjoy the movie.
Please join me in welcoming back to the stage Ira Sachs.
I'd like to invite all the people who worked on this film. It was such a collaborative effort. If you were part of the film, one of the producers, prop persons, anything, please come up and join us. And then I'm going to introduce a few. I'm going to just bring up a few people who really gave so much to this film, beginning with Fred Burrell, the co-producer of the film, right here. Janet Casari, one of the producers of the film. Where's Joanna? Coming down. Really, my partner in making this film from the first day. Oh, this is great. Beautiful people. Jordan Drake, who we did this together. The production designer of the film, Stephen Phelps.
Yeah.
The cinematographer of the film, Alex Sachs. Then I'm going to ask Linda Rosenkrantz to come on stage. Rebecca Hall. Will come through. It began with this woman, so I'm really happy to have her here. So we'll take some questions if people have them. Eugene, if you
I was going to do like a Phil Donahue thing and just kind of say it.
Okay, Phil.
I've got a couple questions, but I just, based on the reaction I just heard from this audience, I know they're going to have some as well, so I'm just going to sit over here. I mean, you're standing here, Ira, next to Linda Rosenkrantz. Tell us about your initial seeds, Ira, in wanting to explore this conversation.
Sure. I've been a follower and fan of Peter's work for decades. Really, it's meant so much to me. The artists from New York and the East Village from the 70s and 80s really always give me courage for what they've done and what they do and the risks they take and the freedoms they seem to find. So when this book was published in 2021, it was the transcript of the conversation between Linda and Peter, and I was reading it in Paris when I was working with Ben and on passages. And I really on the last page, I was very moved by the intimacy of this conversation, and it felt like a great window in to a time and also to a friendship, which was really part of what I found so beautiful. And I really thought in a moment, I should make something of this with Ben. Like it was really all in one. There was no one else who I would do it with, and I think Ben and I share an interest in a lot of things, including this history and Peter's work and people who are sort of trying things differently. And so I thought we could take a risk together with this. I reached out to Linda on Instagram, where she was messaging me. And over time we ended up deciding we could do this together, and she trusted me with this material.
So I would ask Linda, I'd love to hear your side of that when Ira Sachs slides into your DM. And the conversations that the two of you had and why you were also up for this.
Well, I immediately felt that he was the right person to do it. And a lot of passages, I was very impressed with that. And we really hit it off immediately, I think.
I call her Imogene Coca, and she calls me Sid Caesar.
That seems perfect. Let's talk about, Ira, let's talk about casting. Two people standing to your left. Tell us about the conversations that the three of you had and how you made the choices to embody these real people.
Well, I'll tell you something that's sort of different about this film than any of my previous work is these two people are British. So in creating these roles, there would be, by necessity, transforming in a way that I wasn't used to. Usually I ask people to show up and kind of be themselves with my dialogue or the dialogue we write, the situation. Here I was actually asking for a performance. And what was the sort of challenge or what was interesting to me over time is how the performance became as natural as the work that I usually begin with. And yet there's another layer, which is the transformation of these two people. Ben had 55 pages of dialogue. Rebecca had 3. So there are different tasks, and I think what I discovered working with Afonso Gonzalez and putting the film together and editing it is that somehow we still had a two-hander, and that was really interesting to me. But I think their tasks were very different, and they can speak to that. You want to talk about anything? About the material and how you approached it?
It was really difficult to to learn it. Like I showed it to a friend of mine who's a musician, and she was like, "Fuck, this is impossible. This is like trying to learn someone else's improvisation," which is a bit what it was like, because it's not a written thing. I mean, it is written down, but it's full of all of the kind of strangenesses of speech, of the way people would speak. But I found that fascinating. That became it became very fascinating to learn, although very difficult.
Rebecca, you want to talk about the opposite problem, perhaps, which is how you made so much of what you had there?
I mean, I think that it's if the task is to listen, if you've got something interesting to look at and listen to, it sort of does the work for you.
Ira, let me ask you one more question, and then I want to give our audience a chance to ask you some questions. I feel like when I first heard about this project you were embarking on, I guess a bit ago now, I felt like it might have been a shorter or potentially shorter project. Can you talk about how you determined the size and scope and length of it?
Sure, we had a lot of freedom, thanks to a lot of people up here, to make whatever film. It was an art project, and to make whatever film we ended up seeming the right film to make. I wasn't certain in the course, particularly early on, before I cracked the nut of how to shoot the film. When it was just two people talking, it ends up being, there's like 35 scenes, so it became more of a movie, traditional feature film in the production, but also the fact that Ben makes every word valuable was not something I could know beforehand. Every word counts, and he conveys that. So there is an interest that just seems complete for me, and I wanted to see it through. And I think then there's also this other story that I felt developed in the course of production and then also in editing, which was the emotional story between these two friends, which seemed very, very specific. And I wanted to give time for that.
Let's see what our audience...
The Bernard was, particularly Bernard films from the 80s, were very important to the film. Passion and King Lear and So Kippur, and sort of films that asked you to look at the image as telling another story and having another form of expression as well as the dialogue. But those two things can be separate in a certain way. The films that were really transformative were Poor Little Rich Girl, which was the film I'd seen in '94 here in Sundance, the Warhol film. Portrait of Jason by Shirley Clark, which films that were about a camera and a space and an intimacy and the city in a certain way. There's a wonderful film by Jim McBride called My Girlfriend's Wedding that Christopher Munch sent to me. So I think this will help, and it was the film that helped the most.
Yeah, this question is for Ira and the actors. With the script effectively being given to you, how much did you go off of the transcript and how faithful were you to it? And how do you inform yourself just to the line between, are you recreating a moment or are you creating a new moment with an old script?
Yeah, that's interesting questions. I think there was a publication of this transcript as a book that came out in 2021. And so that's what I started with. I then actually went back to the Morgan Library where the archive existed, and I went back to the transcript, and it was wonderful to see what they had missed or what they had chosen not to do that would still seem valuable to me. So for example, the dialogue about Betty Davis and Joan Crawford is not in the book. Yeah. And I love that it almost got lost again, and that somehow now it is preserved. There's something very beautiful about the fact that everything gets lost. This whole, we're gonna get lost, and this moment gets lost, and what I'm saying gets lost, and what you're thinking gets lost. But somehow now this film makes monumental one day. And so the fact that we got a little bit more in, that I think is so beautiful, that particular dialogue, is very moving to me. I'm not crying, I'm just. There was another question about, we didn't go off at all. I mean, I would say that that's part of what he's talking about the rhythm of the it's all the mistakes pretty much are in the way he spoke. So there's almost an observation of the musicality of language.
What are your thoughts about this film?
Well, the great thing to me was that it did reproduce the intimacy between me and Peter, who was a very close friend. And it's just great to see it recreated. It brought it all back to me.
Thank you.
Hi, I love the film. It was mesmerizing. And I felt like there was a seduction between Linda and Peter, both the subject and the interviewer. Was that, Ira, something you were teasing out of it, and Linda, did that dynamic feel at play for you?
I'll let Rebecca talk about that a little bit. I will say that I didn't really know the love story that was in the work we did until I started editing. So I feel like Rebecca, I didn't tell her, it's implied that she liked him, but her feelings for him are really in the performance, and I feel really grateful for that. In terms of the mood of the film, once I had broken it up, and again, it was these films that gave me the permission to have ellipses, these handmade films, and that we wouldn't have to get from space to space. We actually ended up spending 2 months in West Bend, which is the housing center in the lower west side that we were given to make this film. And we were able to shoot stand-ins, models, all through the day with Alex Ash, the great cinematographer of the film. And shooting that space at different times of the day and in different locations and in different moods, I suddenly realized we were beginning to have exploration of portraiture itself, and that wasn't something I knew when I first read Linda's work. And so it became a question of what's the difference if you put someone on a couch at 4 p.m. in the afternoon and you put them in a bedroom at supposedly 6 in the afternoon and the sun's going down? And how does it affect text? And the text is actually not really defined by, it was like a chance project. I didn't say, oh, this needs to happen here. I said, this is what's going to happen here, and the text would fit into that space. So that was a really interesting, I think the actors could talk a little bit about that, how the space and time informed your performances.
Yeah, but, I mean, firstly, to answer the question about the seduction, because I started thinking about it, because I think there is something inherently loving in observation over a duration of time. I'm an actor, but I also think of myself in many ways in the most comfortable place when I'm an observer. And when you observe and watch and listen to someone for a very long amount of time, there is a kind of natural affection and empathy and compassion that happens. And I think that was there because I knew that you loved Peter, but also just it happened. It wasn't really something that was entirely conscious. And in terms of the sort of mood of the piece and how the light affected us, I think that was also a stroke of brilliance on Ira's part, because the moment that the sun goes down and it's warm and twilighty, it just creates a different atmosphere. No matter what we're saying, it's a different atmosphere that we have to find ourselves in.
Yeah, it was nice because you just really, Ira would set up the frame, and you'd have a space to play in, to be in, But then, and we were given stuff, like candlesticks or pistachio nuts or whatever. And then you just did it, and it was whatever happened. And if you tripped up or I don't know, it was discovered in the moment, wasn't it? Yeah. Kind of.
The film, like my previous films, was not rehearsed until we started shooting. And on day one, I thought, well, that was a mistake. Because it was so much text. But by the end of that day, we found a way that made it possible for Ben to find the fluidity that he does. And I'm really, really glad I preserved this no rehearsal approach, because I think there's many things that couldn't exist.
Yeah.
All right, Peter Hujar's Day. Congratulations to this entire team.
Hey, this is Eric from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.